Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Coin Drop Podcast. This is episode 35, and joining me once again is Tim. Tim, how you feeling, man? Last week you were out.
Yeah, thankfully I started to feel better at the end of Sunday, and well, it's just been a week. It's been a very, how do you put this? I was desperate not to be at work all week.
Yeah, I feel that.
Maybe it's because my birthday is coming up on Monday. I don't know.
Maybe. Or maybe Christmas, or, both. That's why I always, whenever I buy you anything for Christmas, I say, Merry, Happy Birthday, Miss, because it's just...
Yeah. You're one of those assholes.
Yeah,
It's your birthday, Christmas.
Hey, man, I'm a gamer on a budget. What do you want? Do you want a copy of Anthem? Because for those of you who don't know, I'm going to plug this right now. Anthem is 99 cents on PC until the 4th of January. The Deluxe Legion edition or whatever is like $1.50, $1.50. Why not buy it if you don't have it? It's $1.50.
Get me that game. Yes,
Okay.
I will take it. My son is interrupting me, so start
You're
talking
good.
while I talk to him.
So I'm going to go ahead and say this. I'm going to say this at the top of the channel. Top of the episode. Anyone who joins the Discord between now and January 24th that wants a free copy of Anthem Base Edition, I'm going to clarify, Base Edition, join the Discord between now and the 24th, between now and January 4th, and I will happily buy you a copy of Anthem. Just to join our Discord.
And I swear to God, if you guys don't take up this offer, I'm gonna be pissed because I've been trying to offer games for like 6 months, and they're games that are. I mean, don't get me wrong. I actually fucking love Anthem, and we could talk about it for quite a while.
Yep.
How disappointed I am, but in any case. How about this? If you request a copy of Anthem, I'll give you another game.
That's our Christmas present to our listeners. Come join the Discord.
Gotta come to Discord though.
Come join the Discord and say gimme, and I'll say cool, and send you a copy of Anthem. Base copy. I'm not buying you the Legion edition. Calm your butt. I don't know how many people, if 100 people flood our Discord, I'm seriously screwed. So you just come by. We'll give you a copy of Anthem for the PC because it's, like I said, 99 cents until January 4th. Well, it's good to have you back, dude. Last week was difficult, I'll say. Trying to have that entire episode by myself was it was a challenge. It's a bit of a challenge. So I'm glad you're back. I think
you did a pretty good job. I mean, I'm sorry that you did that, but or that I made you do that, and that I was wishy-washy as you put it in the episode. Either way, I think you did a pretty good job, and I think it's a good fallback. And just for anyone potentially listening or whoever listens in the future, it will be our last resort.
Yeah.
If
definitely not something I want to do on a consistent basis at all. It was very hard to carry a conversation with myself for 30 minutes. So I'm glad it sounded all right. I listened to it and it made me want to puke, but I can't listen to myself talk that much. Anyways, let's get into our topics tonight. So I briefly touched on last episode, the leak at Insomniac. They got hacked. And, a lot of stuff has come out of that. And I do apologize for those watching this video on YouTube or Twitch. I just literally got back from a Santa trip with my daughter on the Coeur d'Alene Lake. So didn't have time to make slides, just kind of how it goes. We do have some, but for this general kind of topic stuff, unfortunately, you're stuck with our general logo. So Tim, what do we know about what got leaked? There was actually quite a substantial amount of information, and if I understand correctly, a playable build of Wolverine to a certain extent.
Yeah, so I've actually not watched any of the gameplay myself because I was trying to avoid it. It's just so difficult to do so, especially when you're on Twitter and other various gaming outlets and things of that sort. So I know most of this in passing because, like I said, I've tried to avoid it, but like I said, it's impossible.
Right. In
any case, like you suggested, there is a playable build of Wolverine. Excuse me. There's a lot of people that are really hard to say this in a nice way. There's a lot of stupid people out there that are passing along a lot of misinformation about this leak, and I don't mean just specifically Wolverine, but the Insomniac hack. I guess is the best way to put it. It's not a leak; it's a hack.
Right.
This was someone that was illegally broke into their servers.
Yeah, it was malicious as fuck.
A terabyte of data. Yes, they stole almost a terabyte of data, and there's just so much information in there, up to and including personal information of some of the developers, and it's like really sad to see.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to them, and it really sucks. I can only imagine the way they feel about all of this. Yeah. However, it did provide us with a lot of information that we've been pining for a long time, as far as what Sony, or in this case Insomniac, might be working on. And so Wolverine was one of the major portions of this. So there was a playable version or playable demo essentially of Wolverine that was in this terabyte of information. And it's only a couple of hours long, and it's really early build stuff. We're talking like you barely have a character, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
model?
A draw up of, yeah, it's your generic model, but in some cases it actually is Logan's character model. But you'll have, the really crappy surrounding around you and the enemies and things.
Yeah, it's just like a gray box kind of thing.
Combat and exactly. Got it. And so it's not entirely that, but there is some additional. I've seen some, not footage. I've seen pictures of this. That's why I'm giving you this information. But people have actually managed to make this playable on PC, and they've reverse engineered it to make it playable on Xbox Series X, which is almost a slap in the face, especially because, of course, it's going to be exclusive to PlayStation. But it's really not exactly that difficult these days when the PS4 or PS5 and the Series X are basically computers. It probably didn't take that much effort, given how fast it made it. The thing is Insomniac actually used this as a means to find out who was stupid enough to download this, because they're using internet service providers to track down who exactly found this data or downloaded this data, because again, it was a malicious attack,
right?
And so disseminating this information, you're essentially passing along stolen information. And so you're dumb if you did that, and if you're thinking about it, you should probably do it.
Don't do it. Don't be that guy. Or girl. I mean, either.
Whatever. Sure, I guess we can pander.
It's not pandering. I mean, there are some females that listen to this podcast. At least one of them.
I just mean pandering. We're just like, don't be that guy. Or girls. Whatever. It's a generic ass term.
Be inclusive, dick. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna be a dick.
All right. That's
fine. So just to quickly rapid fire some stuff. Other information was, interestingly enough, apparently X-Men is now exclusive to Sony platforms. Don't know what this means for Marvel vs. Capcom. I don't know what this means for the X-Men.
That's actually a really good point.
Those other games. That actually the last one was exclusive to the Switch. I can't think of the name of it at the moment. In any case, X-Men games in general. Apparently, X-Men is now exclusive to PlayStation, which is sort of baffling. Obviously, Sony has managed to get some pretty intense exclusive rights to Marvel games. Although, well, actually, no, Blade is Marvel, is it not?
Blade is Marvel, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
I mentioned so because it's
right, because Arcane, yeah,
Arcane is making Blade for Xbox. Well, presumably, presumably, anyways, it hasn't been confirmed what platform it's on, but.
It's a Bethesda property. It's a Bethesda studio, which means that it's owned by Microsoft, which means it's unlikely it's releasing on PlayStation. But there's been some rumors recently that Elder Scrolls 6 might actually end up released on PlayStation 2. So who knows? I mean, we did have Tim Strauss.
Did you say PlayStation 2? That'd be an interesting one.
PlayStation TOO, asshole. Do I need to spell for you too? God damn.
I had to.
It's fair. It's fair. We're both dads. You got to make those dad jokes. I did it to my daughter today. She's like, "Dad, I'm hungry." I'm like, "Cool, I'm dad." So
yeah, we say that all the time. So hi, hungry. I'm dad. Yeah, we do all.
Yeah, it's like a requirement from becoming a father. But anyways, there has been some speculation that had released for PlayStation as well. So I don't know. It could potentially come to Sony. We did have Tim Stewart, Tim Strout, Tim whatever his name is, the financial CEO for Xbox did say, his whole comment about like where we used to consider not Tom. It wasn't Tom. It's never Tom, Tim. It's never fucking.
It is Tim. You're right. It is Tim.
God damn it, dude.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyways, he said that, like originally they considered PlayStation and Nintendo competition. So maybe moving forward, their strategy is going to be releasing multi-platform games with their main studios. But what's the point of buying Bethesda if they're going to continue to raises all kinds of questions. Anyways, Blade releasing on Sony would be interesting. Them getting that when Insomniac is trying to buy up exclusivity, which they did with X-Men, which you raise a good point with Marvel vs. Capcom, how that's going to work moving forward. My only thought would be that Capcom Marvel vs. Capcom is just not going to include a stable of heroes from the X-Men franchise. So you wouldn't see, obviously the X-Men or like Deadpool because he's associated with the X-Men as well. But you'd probably still see like Spider-Man or Iron Man or, Sentry.
Yeah. It is interesting. Just it's such a massive franchise to essentially leave off of other platforms.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, Sony bought Bungie, although I don't know if we ever brought up the fact that Bungie is in a really bad financial state at the moment, that if whatever the most recent expansion pack that's coming, is it that Last Light or whatever the new one is, whatever the new one is, if it performs poorly, Sony could potentially fully take over Bungie and say, fuck you, we're in control, we'll do whatever we want to, and therefore remove any of their ability to release on platforms outside of PlayStation.
So I'm going to just go ahead and...
I feel like...
Go ahead, finish up.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You've got more knowledge than me.
Well,
So
kind of. So I'm just going to say, I know for a fact that Bungie has their quote-unquote Declaration of Independence on the wall in their offices. So, like, if Sony did that, I don't think it would go well for them. And I don't mean that they wouldn't be within their rights to do that, but I think a lot of people who are the higher-ups at Bungie would probably bounce. Like...
I was going to say exactly the same thing. If Sony did that, that'd be a really stupid move for
that's pure speculation, but based on the culture, the culture that I understood at Bungie before recent layoffs and all that shit, there is some real concern that if the next expansion does not perform well, there will be more layoffs. That's definitely a concern that's concern everywhere right now.
Seriously, I just read that like 3 other studios shut down, major ones too.
Yeah,
the Banner Saga developer just shut down. Time Splitters developer shut down.
Yeah, they're gone.
Sony actually shut down one of their other studios, Fire Sprite Studios. It's everywhere.
I'm pretty convinced that Embracer Group is the cancer of the industry for buying up all these studios and then just shutting them down. So that's great. But let's get back on. Good.
Well, actually, this is getting back on topic.
Right.
Speaking of that, actually, Sony has been sort of pressuring developers to consolidate, and not necessarily consolidate into each other, but to become smaller or save spending. And even though Spider-Man has been super successful and Insomniac themselves have been a super successful studio, they even asked them to lay off some people and get smaller.
Well, and it's not just gaming studios either. We saw Hasbro lay off a ridiculous amount of people in the D&D side of their company after, like, I think it was last year or the year before, they released the movie, which was unbelievably well received.
It was a very good movie.
It was a fantastic movie, and it was incredibly well received. And then they laid off like at least a good couple, I think it was like 100,000 employees or something like that to keep Hasbro healthy. Like, it was an ungodly number. And I'm like, bro, what? Like, coming off of Baldur's, Sven at Larian even said, like, the team he was working with at Wizards of the Coast when they were making Baldur's Gate 3, the entire team they were working with to make that game no longer work there. They've all been laid off. All of them.
Yeah, so we've talked about this before, and I've actually talked to somebody in the tech field, totally unrelated to video games. And a lot of it is due to basically, the best way I can think of to describe it in this moment is gorging during COVID. So basically, they overhired way too many people during COVID, and they're, the industry couldn't foresee that wasn't going to last. And now they're like, fuck. Well, the world's back to normal for the most part.
I think that's bullshit. I think that's bullshit. You can't tell me the industry couldn't see that was going to last. People were buying video games in droves because they couldn't do anything else. People who weren't typically gamers were buying games because they couldn't do anything. You really think that means they're going to stay gamers as soon as they can go back to their regular hobby? It was idiocy. The mass hiring was idiocy from the beginning. Not to mention that game development takes so long, the turnaround time to actually produce a game when you're hiring during a global, just idiocy the whole way through, at least in my opinion.
So just a very, very slight off-topic thing here. I've got a buddy that's actually talking to me on Discord at the moment. I'm trying to stay relevant, but he's not allowed to comment on the stream on Twitch at the moment.
Okay, yeah, it's probably
it says it specifically states you need to verify your account. I don't know if that's our thing or if that's Twitch's thing.
That's our thing. It might be partly Twitch. If he just made a Twitch account, that might be a Twitch thing. It's also ours that I believe Mike set it up, so they have to be like recently verified on Twitch with us so that they can complement. It's a form of bot gate and griefing gate that he set up. I'm not too familiar with everything in it, but I believe
How does he get verified?
Should send you an email, I would assume.
Okay.
You just have to like click verify
now he
or something
knows,
like
just
that.
to know he's listening. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us, whoever you are, Mr. Mysterious Man. So, but let's get back to Insomniac. Like we got a little bit off. I got a little ranty. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Let's get back to the content.
Right. So there, like I said, there was just so much announced from this. So this one, in my opinion, I don't know how to word this in such a way that's going to not make me sound like an arrogant asshole.
Well, I mean, that was your nickname.
Is that like my name?
Yeah, that was your nickname.
I was just going to say, wasn't that my nickname on the last one?
Yeah, I was. No, I was
Lord Asshole, and I was arrogant douchebag.
You were arrogant supreme, and I was Lord Asshole. That's what it was back in the Gamer Society days. Yeah,
old school days. Yeah. Yes. So I don't know how to say this without sounding arrogant as fuck, but to just give you a teeny little bit of information, I literally have not predicted the price range. And when I say price range, I've been within $50 of literally all video game tech since 2012. Literally everything. I've been within $50 every time. And most of the time I've been on the money. And let me get to the point. The point here is that in this hack, apparently Sony has been talking about potentially increasing the cost of their video games again, which the most recent $10 jump didn't go over well, which in my opinion doesn't make any sense. It was like a 13-year gap between going from 50 to 60 and 60 to 70.
Well, and just to weigh in on that, like nobody wants their games to increase in price.
Of course not. Yeah, and of course not. I fully understand that. And like the $10, even to me, the $10 difference makes a big difference. Like now I'm like, oh, $60, whatever, $70. I can wait. Yeah. And to be fair, most of the time you really can.
Yeah.
Wait, 2-3 months and the game's already $40 or whatever.
Right.
Anyways, I think that they're within their right, which is why the majority of the industry has moved that way. And it's not that big a deal.
But now they're talking about jumping to $80.
Yes. Well, actually, no.
Okay.
They're considering a range between 80 and 100. And I think this is literally nothing more than just them talking to each other, brainstorming.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you think it's possible? And there was even a date range on this, 2027.
Sure.
Not,
not
right
tomorrow.
Now. So we're talking 3 to 4 years from now. And, maybe when the PlayStation 6 comes out, 'cause that's probably around the time frame that'll come out, is 2027, 2028, something like that. And so I think it's nothing more than brainstorming. I literally think it's absolutely nothing more than that. And there's literally nothing of them going, hell yeah, let's do this. Let's figure it out. How can we manage to make this happen? It's literally, what do you think? Do you think the industry might, take this in stride? I literally think it's nothing more than that. And people have been making a big deal about it. And I don't know how to tell everyone, you're fucking stupid. So just shut up about it.
Well, I can understand their concerns because they're not the first ones. Blizzard recently, after the announcement of their Diablo 4 expansion, Lord of Hatred or whatever the hell, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head right now, about Mephisto, basically. There was an article put out that they were polling to see if people would be willing to pay $100 for that expansion. Yep. So Sony's not the only one doing this, which is concerning. Because if the rest of the industry decides that that's the way to go, guess what? That's the way it's going to go. And the only power we have as consumers is saying, yeah, fuck that, I'll wait for sale. That's really the only power we have.
Like I said, it's... I can basically apply the same logic to Diablo, or Blizzard in this case.
Sure.
I really don't expect even them to do it. I literally like.
I expect there to be an edition of that expansion that releases for $100, like the base game. Diablo 4 released an Ultimate Edition, was $100. It came with a bunch of extra shit. Fully expect the same for the expansion, but the base version of that expansion, I do not expect it to be $100. Just like what we talked about with GTA 6, I would be surprised if there wasn't a $200 version of that game that came out. Is the base game going to be $100? Probably not. Probably not. Actually, I would say it's highly unlikely it is. So
the way the industry's been going, I mean, look at Assassin's Creed Mirage. The game launched at $50.
Did it really? I still haven't bought it because it's not on Steam, and I refuse to use any other launcher. I fucking hate it. I hate that I have EA and Battle.net. And God damn it.
The base game launched at $50, and there's a lot of games that have been doing that lately. Yeah. And if anything, that's literally, like as you said, nothing more than a version of it.
Right.
Are people willing to spend $100 on this, assuming they get X along with it? Right. And I think if anything, they're going to be smart and undercut the price that way, or at the very least follow the industry standard. That way, people are willing to spend that money.
So I'm just going to say, for argument's sake, Destiny 2 has been releasing $100 versions of its expansion for a while now. But you get the expansion plus the annual pass for that $100. Now, I don't personally pay for Bungie. If I can't get a free copy, friends and family copy, I don't buy it. But the new one, which everybody is overwhelmingly saying is awful, is on sale right now on the Steam sale for $20. The annual pass version, I think, is $30. Yeah, the annual pass version plus Lightfall is $40, and just Lightfall is $20. That seems pretty reasonable to me. So, I mean, the only, like, if this happens, and it's a huge if, let's be real, if it happens, the only thing you can do as a gamer is the same thing we can do with microtransactions. You have to vote with your wallet. That's it. If the industry decides to move that direction, there is shit all you, me, or Joe Blow, or any other fucker out there can do about it. The only choice we have is go, not buying it on release day. And to be honest with you, I don't buy any game on release day anymore, because on PC, most of them launch in a broken ass shit state. So,
and just look at a perfect example, which this one I was actually talking to my wife about earlier today, is the Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. The game launched like literally this month. And you can already buy it for $50, which is $30 or $20 off. So 30% off, roughly. The game, oddly enough, released with like zero fanfare, be it positive or negative. It's just been the reviews that have come out for it, or like Digital Foundry or various other websites that have talked about it actually rather positively, saying it's a very solid game. It's got a lot of Fallout in it, and there's little things in it that are a little bit repetitive.
Fallout or Far Cry?
But ultimately, did I say Fallout?
You said Fallout. Far Cry. That's what I thought. Okay.
It's got a lot of Far Cry in it. Yeah. It's got a lot of Far Cry in it. But it's got some things that are, repetitive, this or that. But ultimately, it's a really solid game, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Really well put together. But ultimately, like, the community's been silent on it. Which is weird, because there's no one way or the other, which very rarely happens. In any case, to the point of, just wait. Wait a little bit. In this case, wait 2 weeks, and the game is already 30% off. And maybe it's just the time of the year. I don't know, but ultimately, most games go on sale pretty darn quick. So you really, really don't have to buy on launch date.
Yeah.
Unless it's a franchise you absolutely, like, you yourself love beyond belief, and you have to buy it right away. Just wait. Within 2 months, you're going to be able to get a decent discount.
Yeah, the FOMO thing is definitely something I've never personally felt in most cases, but I know that's a thing that a lot of consumers deal with, is like, oh, well, I don't want to miss out on this or that or whatever. And it can be a challenge for certain games and any other form of media that can get spoiled for you. If you don't see it or play it or beat it as soon as it comes out, your chances of spoilers moving further down the line drastically increase. I mean, I don't know how many people here have ever seen Fight Club, but guess what? Edward Norton is Tyler Durden. there's a spoiler for you if you haven't seen the 1999 movie. At this point, you're way behind, and I don't really give a shit. But like ultimately, you know, you hit a point where like it's impossible. Jack dies at the end of Titanic. Like if you haven't seen these movies, the longer you go without them, obviously your chances of spoilers rise. So that's the same in the gaming industry, and I would say more so if you're anybody that actually like looks into articles and things like that. It's almost impossible. I literally went like radio silence on news after Baldur's Gate came out because I didn't want spoilers. It was very, very hard to avoid spoilers for that game. And there's still a few that I ended up seeing, but I have no idea how the game ends. So I'm happy about that. But I know the longer I take to beat it, the higher my odds are of finding out how it ends before I beat it. So I get the fear of missing out in that aspect. But yeah, ultimately, like, vote with your wallet. Unless you are absolutely dedicated to a franchise. I used to be that way with Assassin's Creed. I would go to midnight releases for Assassin's Creed. I went and got every single Assassin's Creed the day it came out, from 1 all the way up to, what was the last one I played? I guess 4. 4 was the last like mainline release that I like bought midnight release and played. No, I guess I played Unity too. So yeah. Anyway, if it's a franchise you love, we're not telling you not to buy it. If you want to vote that way, go for it. Do it. But if you don't like that this is where the industry's going, because regardless of when it happens, I'm here to tell you it's going to happen. Historically, game prices have gone up since, I mean, technically, arguably, they went down after the 90s.
Yes.
Because NES games used to be like $100 a pop, didn't they?
And that was back in like the early 90s.
That's what I'm saying.
80s.
Yeah.
That was, nowadays would be like $150 a game.
Right. Because of inflation. So like arguably we have been in a dip since video games have been a thing. So if you don't want to spend that money, don't. Nobody's going to make you. I get like the fear of missing out, but don't let that control you to a point where you're spending outside of your budget or your availability.
And the whole thing about voting with your wallet is that, like, just look at microtransactions as a really good example. We won that war. And what I mean by that is when they first came out, it was everything. You could buy power, you could buy armor, you could buy all these things. And now 99.9% of games that have microtransactions are cosmetic, and that's it.
Yep.
Nothing else.
Yep. Few.
And sure, they're in most video games, and even though people dislike that, they're still almost only ever cosmetics. And you literally can't be upset about that.
Yeah.
Sorry. But.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've gotten pretty far off of Insomniac here at this point. But hopefully the conversation was enjoyable.
There's a lot more to talk about with them too.
I do want to call out real quick before we move on. The bar for writing any kind of news for video games seems to have been dramatically lowered. I can't tell you how many articles I've seen. This game meets this game. What was it? It was Horizon Zero Dawn X Pokemon equals this amazing new open world game. Do you want to know what game they were talking about? Fucking Monster Hunter, man. You can't say Horizon and Pokemon is Monster Hunter when Monster Hunter is older than Horizon. What?
Yes. Monster Hunter is older than Horizon and
almost as old as Pokemon.
Close to Pokemon. Yeah,
almost as
close. Old. Yeah. And not only that, the only similarity that it shares to Horizon is what? Dinosaurs?
Basically.
And the only similarity it shows to Pokemon is
RPG. Leveling up, I guess. And you don't even really. I don't. Yeah. No, I would say it doesn't.
That's just one of many absolutely retarded articles.
Just so many. But the latest is an article saying that Spider-Man 2 is going to release on PC in April of 2024 because it finished development in financial year, this fiscal year, whatever. It's not coming in April. It's not. It's blatant bullshit. And these writers who are doing this shit, I'm convinced they're AI. Like more and more every day that passes, dude. More and more every day that passes, I'm convinced we're living in the Matrix, and 99% of people are chat GPT bots. Like, I'm just the longer I go on, the more I'm convinced of that. But
so the what he's getting at here, to be more specific, is that basically there was an article written. I'm trying to remember which article or which website wrote it, but it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Websites suck these days.
Yeah, they do.
Most websites are pretty terrible these days. Basically, they stated that because of this leak, that Spider-Man 2 development on PC is getting pretty close to finishing. And that means we'll see it in the next couple of months, probably by April. They literally went far up their ass with a whole fist and said, April. Sounds good. And yanked it out for some reason.
Yep.
Like zero, any sort of concrete or substantial information saying as such. Yet you can say for various other things, one because of the leak or hack, and one because of something Sony said directly. The thing Sony said directly, this was a while back, that basically they said the reason why they're not releasing anything on PC, or not the reason why they're not releasing anything, but they're not going to release things on PC for at least a year. And I actually just pulled up the article on that. Back in, what was the, I hate when, okay, October 4th of 2022, so a little over a year ago, they said that PlayStation games will not release on PC for, quote, at least a year. So that suggests what is it? Was it October or November for Spider-Man?
It was, yeah, I think it was October, but either way, we're still waiting on Ghost of Tsushima. We're still waiting on Ghost of Tsushima.
We're still waiting on Bloodborne, damn it.
yeah.
But they have straight said their games will not release on PC for at least a year. Yep. At least. Well, due to this hack, it actually came out that an Insomniac game, specifically Ratchet & Clank, or not Ratchet & Clank, I'm sorry, actually not an Insomniac game, a Guerrilla Games, Horizon Forbidden West. At the year mark, they released it on PlayStation Plus Extra, where, you know, the slightly higher tier where you can play a whole bunch of games. The Game Pass, essentially.
Right.
When it released on PlayStation Plus Essential or Extra or whatever, the engagement for the game shot through the roof. A shit ton of people started playing the game because of that, because, you know, they're paying $10 to $12 a month or whatever. Sure, why not? Let's jump on this great AAA title. But the sales of the game, like, absolutely flatlined. So they just destroyed the sales of the video game. And, you know, at the time, the game was still at least $50. And so it's a lot of sales lost, because they did have a trajectory. There was actually a graph. There's a trajectory of the sales of the game, and they were steadily increasing, which was actually on track and slightly better than Horizon Zero Dawn. So it was actually selling better, even though the system itself had less consoles available than the PS4 did at the time, but it's also available on PS4 and 5. Anyways, there's all sorts of reasons to say that, of course, games won't release, PlayStation games exclusives won't release on PC for at least a year, because Sony said it, and their data bears that information out. And it's the reason why they don't do it. And it makes you wonder why Xbox does, because Xbox themselves have said it's not sustainable and it hurts sales. As has pretty much everyone else who's released their games on Game Pass. It basically said that it cannibalizes sales and it hurts them. Microsoft just has deep pockets, and they're like, fuck it, we sell all these other things. Go ahead and throw money away. Who cares?
Yeah. I think that there's so much here to talk about that, like, we could spend all night just discussing everything from this leak, but we're going to move on, because I've got a topic that I am actually very interested in talking about. Sony has filed for a patent, which kind of blew my mind when you brought this to my attention, because this has kind of existed more or less already. They filed a patent for scalable difficulty for video games on the fly. So if I understand this correctly, what they're doing is making it so if a player is struggling with a certain part of the game will then scale down the difficulty. Is that kind of how that's working?
So the quote that is used in the patent says, new methods that allow the difficulty of an interactive session to be dynamically adjusted according to the current capabilities of a user, and that change as the capabilities of the user change over time. So, yes.
So in this case, it would be scaling down and then potentially scaling back up is kind of what it sounds like from the end there. Okay. That's a little bit of a different. Okay, that's a little bit different, because this has more or less existed in game design for a while. I can't remember where I saw it, but I remember a whole video about it where, like, not every game, and definitely not a lot of games, but some games would actually build that into the code, where if they got to a difficult part, I think actually, if I remember correctly, it was the first Dead Space that I remember it being in. The asteroid scene, where you have to break the asteroids before they hit the USS Ishimura. And it was an incredibly hard part of the game, because the devs did it so much trying to bug fix it that they were able to just know exactly where to fire. And then they got, like, blind to how hard it was. And it wasn't until after it released that they realized, like, holy shit, this is incredibly difficult. And they put a patch in. I could be misremembering this whole thing, but I know it was something similar to this. They put a patch in that made it so it, like, scaled. right? So if you failed it a bunch of times, it would start to drop how many asteroids were actually coming at you. So like it's been a thing for a while.
It's effectively like in previous games, like in Dead Space, you're saying it just did automatically.
Right.
In previous games, it would basically, in effect, say, you suck ass. Do you want to make it easier?
Well, and it wouldn't even give you that in some games. It would just do it. Like it would be no notice. It wasn't even a feature you could turn on or off. It was just something that happened if the game caught you struggling in certain areas. So I'm curious if Sony's going to make this a toggleable thing.
I would really hope so. It's because I personally, so like if I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima on the realism mode, if I'm playing that, I chose that mode. Right. I want to, die in a single swing. Yeah. And I want to get better. I don't want to make it slightly easier so I can get past this section and make it harder later when I figure things out. No. I want to be able to toggle it because I want to say fuck that mode. At the same time, for my kids, that would be a really good option for them. To make it easier and more fun for them to play because they're not like me. And when it comes to that termination, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't specify, but as you stated, essentially this is a reactionary difficulty adjustment that, depending on how well or poorly you're doing, it will adjust itself to make it. So I guess either easier or more of a challenge.
That actually raises an interesting question: is how far is that range going to go? Right? Like if you're playing Ghost of Tsushima and you're playing it on hard and you're sucking, how far down is it going to go? You know what I mean? Like, is there going to be a point where it basically dubs it down to a point where your kid could get good at it at a lower difficulty and then scale back up? Like it's interesting. And I'm curious to find out more about it.
So reading this patent a little bit more, interestingly enough, it states that in the patent itself, it actually sort of alludes to carrying over between different video games. So,
weird.
Quote, evaluating game performance data collected when the user plays a second interactive session associated with a same or different digital content title, which could potentially mean that if you play Spider-Man 2 and, play in X fashion, good or bad, it'll store that performance data for the next game. And the next game will automatically be adjusted based on your performance in 2. So in 3, it'll pick up as far as difficulty is required immediately based on your performance in 2.
So if they ever make Demon's Souls 2, all our Souls fans are screwed for literally every other game they play and are going to play everything on Souls-like difficulty. Is what I'm hearing.
I don't know if that's going to be relevant to games in the same series, although it does specifically say same or different.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like it's going to be on the system side then, rather than on the... Yeah. But how are... Yeah. The devs have to code for that.
They would have to, yes, but then it's the same thing as the adaptive triggers on the DualSense. They have to code for that.
Sure.
So this would be something that Sony, my guess, anyways, would make super easy, like a
plugin of some sort.
A middleware, a middleware piece of software that they could just throw at developers, and if they want to use it, they can. If they don't, then they don't.
I mean, I suppose it could be as something as potentially as simple as percentages, right? Like if you're getting too good at the game, make a boss deal more damage, make them have more health, make you have less health, percentage wise. So in theory, knowing nothing about game development, in theory, maybe it could be something that simple and then just reverse the scale if it needs to be easier kind of thing. But who knows? It's an interesting bit of tech, and I'm curious to find out how Sony implements it.
It also depends on will they implement it? Yeah. I mean, obviously they're trying things all the time. This was because of the hack. So for all we know, this is just them playing with ideas, and we never see the light. It never sees the light of day.
I mean, that happens all the time. I think I briefly mentioned. I can't remember if I told you.
Yeah, isn't that Apple's business model? Yeah. Buy all of the different software developers and then can everything?
Yeah. I was actually going with the Q&A I had with the Enshrouded devs, Keen Games. I can't remember if I told you or if I read it on the actual podcast last week, but actually the working title for Enshrouded was like Game 37 or something like that before they had a title.
You mentioned that.
So that implies that like maybe they had 36 other ideas that they shelved and just walked away from, and this just happened to be the 37th idea. So it very well could be like that. I know for a fact that, half the games developers make never see the light of day. Probably more than half the games they make never see anything that even resembles a game. So yeah, it very well could be something like that. This is just a patent for something they're working on. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And we weren't really meant to know either way until it became a thing. Yeah. So obviously, because it came from that hack.
We'll see. Obviously, one way or another, we'll either see something or we won't. I mean, hell, perfect example is Sony had that. I can't remember what they called it, but the spatial hearing thing.
3-dimensional audio.
Yeah, and like it's there, but they were supposed to at some point allow you to actually like map your ears.
I remember that. Yeah, there was supposed to be
design it for your ears.
Right.
And that never became.
Yeah, I remember that. You were supposed to be able to like take a mold of your ear and like send that to the audio engineers, and then they would map that audio file specifically to a headset for you or something like that. Sounded super fucking cool. Realistically, probably incredibly expensive.
I don't think you actually took a mold. I think it had something to do with like
maybe it was a picture. Yeah, I think it was a picture and they scanned
pictures or something along those lines. Yeah. But now they just chose a few different presets and they're like, which one sounds the best to you? And there's multiple options. And don't get me wrong, it's still great, but it's almost unfortunate that it didn't happen individually like they said it would. But
I still think SteelSeries is the best headsets in the market. If you're looking for a headset, get a SteelSeries. The Arctic 7s are amazing. This is a SteelSeries. I've had it for years. Fantastic headset. Highly recommend SteelSeries over anything else gaming related. These are the best in my opinion, and I've used a lot of headsets, but that's just me.
You hear that, SteelSeries? Give us some money because we just plugged you to our 4 people.
Well, we got to tell that to Digital Foundry then too, because you hit your quota. You hit your quota constantly. You hit it quick. I think you hit it in like 12 minutes, man. That's a new record. You were on that one.
They've had some decent videos this month, but it seems like for me, they have a good video every week.
All right, well, let's move on to our final topic for the night. We are talking about not Lies of P, but I love the wallpaper, so I put it back up here. We're talking about what I've decided to call Ad Pass. So it's Game Pass that apparently is going free with ads. So I'm calling it Ad Pass.
I actually don't know if this is an official thing. I think this was more of a kind of like the Sony thing. Is it an idea?
Is it? Okay, I wasn't sure if this was an official thing or not. I do want to talk about it though, because I think it's really interesting. I know we had an article on it like a week or so ago. I think it's a really good idea because Game Pass already is trash for sales. Like, great as a consumer product. Again, I'll swear up and down, Game Pass is one of the greatest fucking things for consumer, but as a business model, I don't understand what they're doing. Awful. Yeah, I don't get it. But if Game Pass goes free with ads, first of all, I'm curious how that's going to affect gameplay. Like, what are we talking about? Are we talking like pop-ups? Are we talking like intermittent, like you get to a checkpoint?
How do you do that in a game like Skyrim or Starfield or things like that? You just randomly, as you're running around, it just goes, hey, by the way, buy a Sprite. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
If it's a game like God of War, sure, maybe after a boss.
Or any kind of linear game. I mean, just one I've been playing through, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. Great opportunity. Obviously, that game's not coming to Game Pass, but great opportunity between each chapter. Boom, cutscene. Boom, ad. Boom, back into the game. Like, how does that work in theory?
It's totally possible. We're like, for me, this actually brings back childhood nostalgia of watching, say Power Rangers or whatever it is, and then, ads come on, the commercials come on. I run to the bathroom real quick and come back. So like, it's not necessarily a bad thing in my eyes.
Get another bowl of Cocoa Puffs and sprint back to the living room.
Yes. So like, for me, I refuse to pay for Game Pass unless there's a game I really want to play. I'm gonna give them $5 to $10 or whatever, play that game and be done. So I mean, I'm ripping them off.
Well, you can't do that anymore. They've changed their prices pretty substantially, but
they have. But the point is I refuse to pay for it, and so this might actually allow me to play the games more willingly.
Right.
If it's, there's an ad here and there, sure, whatever. But it really, honestly, the fulcrum of this is how intrusive are those ads gonna be? Are they going to stop my gameplay mid-gameplay? Like, am I going to be in the middle of a swing doing a combo and it just goes, by the way, buy an Xbox Series X or whatever it may be?
You're in the middle of playing freaking Marvel vs. Capcom, and you're like about to land a like 20-point fucking combo, and it's like, oh hey, buy a Sprite.
Yeah, well, I'm actually that's a bad choice because X-Men is exclusive to Sony.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, okay, so maybe Street Fighter 17 or Mortal Kombat 22.3, whatever, you know.
Yeah. So it really just depends on the intrusiveness of it. I mean, I would hope that it would be intelligent and it would pick a down point in the video game, but how often is it going to be? Is it going to be every 15 minutes, 20 minutes? Is it going to be every 5 minutes? Like, how annoying is it gonna be? So I've actually found an article on it, and it's actually something that, to get the name appropriate, Tim Stewart,
there it is, earlier,
he's the CFO. He has essentially, the best way to describe it is, hinted at the idea of that being a possibility. He said some noise is happening around me. It just confused me. Sorry.
Well, while you're trying to figure that out, I did pull up Xbox Game Pass, their website, and the PC version.
Talk for a minute. I'll be right back.
No problem. The PC version, they've got two versions. They've got PC and Ultimate. Not sure why one is PC and why one's Ultimate when I'm under just the PC tab. Their naming convention aside, the first 14 days are still only $1 according to Xbox.com. And then the PC, which you get, high quality games on PC, new games on day one, member deals, member discounts and deals, and EA Play membership, $9.99 a month for that. And then Ultimate, this is the weird one that I don't really understand. For $16.99 a month, you get high quality games on console, PC, and cloud. So I guess that's just bundling everything together. And then you get, in addition to what you get from the base PC version, the Ultimate version also gives you online console multiplayer. So I don't know if that's including like Xbox Live if you're on Xbox, or if that's allowing you to play cross-play on PC. Like, it's a really weird terminology here, but basically bottom line is the first 14 days are $1, and then you either have $9.99 a month or $16.99 a month for Xbox Game Pass. And honestly, that's cheaper than Netflix 4K. Like, that's a really good price to be gaming.
Yes, like you say, like their value is extremely high, but everything that's come out, it says that it's unsustainable, including Microsoft themselves, which is why they've actually stated, or I think this actually might have been essentially a leak because of the Activision acquisition, that if they don't hit a certain threshold, which at this rate is more of they have to climb in user count. If they don't hit a certain threshold, it's so unsustainable that they actually might have to jump out of making video games. They might just quit the industry as a whole, which I really don't see happening. No. I think that's hyperbolic.
Yeah.
But something will have to change eventually. Their investors aren't just going to be happy with them throwing away money all the time. And so, I mean,
they've got a crazy good list of games. I'm just looking at all their PC games because, again, I'm a PC player. That's my primary place. They're getting Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name. Remnant from the Ashes is on here. Far Cry 6, Dead Space, Dune, Spice Wars, Pillars of Eternity. Remnant 2 is on here. Wild Hearts is on here. Rise of the Tomb Raider is on here. Goat Simulator 3 is on here.
So
just a ton of great
water
games.
On your fire. Not to pour water on your fire here, but they've actually, so like those are all good games. Mm-hmm, yes. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft is doing everything they possibly can to snag really good, solid, good games that are releasing in the now rather than in the past.
Right.
Because most of those games, other than the Like a Dragon games, are kind of old.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is other than Remnant. So hang on. The titles like Remnant are more, not necessarily B-list games, but they're not the big, huge titles.
Yes.
Same with Like a Dragon. I love the franchise, the Like a Dragon franchise. They're awesome games, but they're not major mainline titles like, say, Destiny or whatever.
Yeah. Now, I'm looking through it trying to find like a big title, and to be honest, you're nailing it. Like there's not really a big game. It's all older stuff.
They've got either older titles, AA or lesser titles. They're struggling to get those big games because, as we've seen and as developers have said more than one time, including Sony and Microsoft themselves, releasing day and date or even near day and date on these type of services hurts sales exponentially. And there's a reason why Microsoft has stated that if they don't hit a certain threshold, they're basically kaput. And I mean, I don't know how they're going to manage to put it. Like, they've actually, for the third year in a row, have missed their targets for Game Pass subscribers.
Yeah.
Like, literally within the last week, they've stated that they've yet again missed their targets. And I don't think it's going to be as ridiculous as them jumping out of the industry, but they themselves said that. So maybe I'm just being hopeful here because I don't want them to go away. I want them to do better, but I don't want them to go away, you know?
I mean, so far, looking through their titles, I've gone through almost everything now. It looks like the two newest games they have on here
Remnant, probably.
are Remnant 2 and Lies of P. Those are the only two on here. Starfield's on here, obviously, right? So that's another...
Yeah, everything Microsoft makes goes on.
Right, yeah, that's another quote-unquote big title. But, like, looking through this, every game on here, don't get me wrong, there's a ton of bangers on here. There's great games on here. There is nothing that is like super modern, super new, that is like, oh, I gotta get Game Pass for it. Yeah.
Let me put it in perspective with Starfield real quick. They have roughly 25 million Game Pass subscribers, which, don't get me wrong, that's a good number.
Yeah.
But they only have 13 million players for Starfield. And that includes people who purchased the game.
Right.
So that's roughly half of Game Pass ish, and then whoever it is that bought the game. More than likely 10 million plus didn't buy the game.
Yeah.
Which means they spent $10 or so for the game. Maybe more if you really want to consider it, but I guarantee those people are both playing other games as well, therefore dropping the price that you can add to Starfield's quote sales.
Right.
So, like, this is a perfect example of it hurting sales, because if Starfield wasn't on Game Pass because Microsoft owns them, it would have probably sold 13 million copies. Sold 13 copies.
Yeah. So did we find out for sure whether or not this ad pass is actually coming? Did you happen to find anything?
Based on what I can read, it is not a guarantee. It's essentially a thought, but it was shared by Tim Stewart. So it sort of suggests it's probably going to happen eventually. And again, someone like me, that's going to give me an option to actually give their games a try. Now, is that going to turn into sales or anything positive for them?
No.
I don't know exactly how well advertising works. I mean, I don't even care how much they advertise or interrupt my gameplay to advertise, depending on how bad it is. But the point is how much money is that going to net them, you know, losing, quote, $10 a month because I'm now playing, quote, for free? How much of the advertisers are going to pay them to break that up, and how many more people are going to join in so they then therefore get more money? I do know, I can state that there are a lot of video games that do some sort of thing like this, that they don't, you know, interrupt gameplay for advertising, but they advertise in the game,
right?
Because Sprite's available and you can see a Sprite symbol somewhere. I do know that sort of advertising does pay a lot. I mean, just a perfect example, a Super Bowl ad costs like $5 million.
Good God. Good God.
They pay a lot of money for very, quote, small amounts of time. So this could actually be really, really good for them.
Yeah.
And for all we know, it's exactly what they need.
Maybe. I mean, it's an interesting thought. I'll be curious to see how and if they implement this moving forward. But I think that's just about going to wrap it up tonight. Tim, you got any final thoughts before we plug our new thing we're doing over on Patreon and move over there?
You should try out New World because it's an awesome game. That's what I'm saying.
All right. Well, so thanks again for listening to us, guys. Just to plug what we're doing over on Patreon, we're trying something new tonight. We're going to be discussing some upcoming games in addition to our normal content. We're going to be weekly kind of saying what games are coming up and just kind of giving our brief thoughts. Yes, soon, like within the next month. We're going to be like, hey, this game's coming, this game's coming. It's a new segment we're trying out. So if you want to check it out, head over to our Patreon and consider donating to us. For $3 a month, you get these episodes early, as well as that bonus content over there. Our topic that we do is usually at a minimum 15 minutes of length, plus obviously this new segment. So you're getting a good bonus. It's $3 a month. Patreon.com/coindroppod. You can support us there. We'd love to have you, and we will catch you next time. And one more thought. Merry Christmas.
And tell your mom I said hi.
Got it.